welcome to Wilder Outdoor Academy. In today's lesson, I'll teach you how to make a fire starter. So what's a fire starter? A fire starter is something that you can light, either with a match or some other fire source, but that will burn for a long time and will help you start your fire if you're camping or if you're in a survival situation. They're really useful to have in the outdoors. Why are they useful? One, they burn for a long time. So if wood is wet or you can't get access to dry tinder or kindling, a fire starter will burn long enough to hopefully dry out some of that lighter wood and catch it on fire that you can then use to dry your other wood. The other thing is that it doesn't require a lot of tending. So even when you're just camping for fun, it's nice to have something that you can light that you know is going to burn long enough to just sort of set it and leave it, right? If you light a fire starter, it should burn long enough for you to just sort of set a structure around it, and it'll burn nicely with minimal effort on your part. So with that, let's get started. For today's lesson, you will need a few things. The first is some sort of glass container. What we're going to do with this is we're going to melt wax in it. So something with a handle is certainly helpful. We'll also want something to put our hands in. I'm going to use oven mitts, but you could use just a rag or some gloves. But this will be hot when we use it. So again, a handle is certainly helpful and something that we can pour out of. If you don't have that, a glass jar is fine. You just might want to use tongs and just be a little more careful when you're pouring. The next thing we'll need is a paper egg carton. And these are going to hold our fire starters, or our fire starting material. You'll need a candle or some paraffin wax. Doesn't have to be nice. In fact, the simpler the candle, the better. I think we got this for $1 at the dollar store. Even used it a little bit. And the last thing, I shouldn't say the last thing, the next to last thing you'll need is either some dryer lint, or I have wood shavings here. So this is basically sawdust from a friend who does a lot of woodwork. Either one will work. We're going to use this as the filler in our fire starter. Wood will burn longer and hotter, but everyone has access to dryer lint, hopefully, and it's not a very complicated thing to find or use. The last thing that you'll need is something to work on that can get wax on it that won't be ruined. So for me, I use a baking sheet. It's just a baking sheet that we use that I'll clean after this project. So the first step is to melt our wax. And the easiest way to do that is in the oven. So my oven has been heating to 300 degrees for the last, however long it's been since I set it, but it should be there by now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my candle or my paraffin wax. Again, you can just buy wax directly off the internet. I'm going to put it in my heat-safe material, or my heat-safe container, and I'm going to put that in the oven for about 15 minutes until it's completely melted. As you can see, our oven is at 300 degrees, so it's time to put our candle in the oven. Here we go. So now that we've melted our wax, it's time to make the fire starter. So I will start with the dryer lint, since that's what most of us probably have. I'm going to open up my egg carton, and I'm going to start by adding just a little bit of lint into one of the shells. So not a ton, just a little bit. Again, using my glove, because this glass is very, very hot still, I'm going to pour a little bit of wax on that lint. Actually, just remembered I forgot an important step. There's a wick in this wax because I used a candle. So I'm going to, using some kitchen tongs, pull that wick out just so it doesn't get in the way or cause any trouble. All right, now that I've poured some wax into the little bit of lint that was down there. I'm just going to keep layering in lint and pushing it down. The reason I layer is because I want wax at every level of my fire starter. So I do another little layer. I add a little more wax. And again, I'm doing this on a baking sheet so that the wax that spills out or the wax that runs through the cardboard will not ruin the baking sheet, or will not ruin the surface I'm working on. So now I've done that. Put a little bit more lint in there. My third layer. Oh boy. Don't grab that, folks. That's hot. Add a little more wax. The top of your lint should be completely covered. Now on mine, some of the lint is spilling over, or sorry, some of the wax is spilling over. So what I will do now is keep making more and more fire starters until this whole thing is full, or until I'm out of wax and dryer lint. Now, I told you that we would do the same thing with some of our wood chips. So just to give you an example, I'm going to take a little bit of wood chips, pour them in here. This one already has some hot wax in it, so I might add a little extra. Okay, and again, I want it in layers because I want that wax to go all the way through this. So what's going to happen is as we burn it, that wax is going to keep the material from burning up fast. Really need to keep this glove on the whole time. The wax is going to keep the wood from burning up quickly, or the lint. And so it's really important to have wax throughout the fire starter so that it doesn't burn too quickly when it gets to any point in the fire starter after you've lit it. Now, as a fun game or fun experiment after this, I'm going to go outside and light these and see which one burns longer, the lint or the wood. My bet is on the wood because the wood is denser, but only science can tell. So I've put my last layer of wood shavings here. I'm going to pour that on top. And now I let it cool. That's it. So once you have made your fire starters, they've cooled and they're ready to go, what I like to do is you can either on a camping trip, if you know you're going to be out for a long time, just throw this whole carton in your backpack or in your car if you're car camping. Another option is to just cut them into individual squares and keep them inside of a plastic bag or something like that, because you do want them to stay dry. They are very hard to light if they get wet, but the wax thankfully will seal the material that's inside. So if you are lighting it and it's wet, you have to melt some of the wax. But otherwise, you can just light the edges of the milk carton if it's dry. So again, cutting these into squares, taking them with you camping usually I just keep them in a Ziploc bag with my matches. Great thing to do whenever you're in the outdoors. Okay, I promised you an experiment. Let's see which one burns the longest. So here I've got my fire starter with wood shavings. And here I've got my fire starter with dryer lint. Now, to control for all the appropriate variables, I will light this corner of each one at the same time. In fact, I'll put them close enough to touch. And I'm going to light it. We'll see how long each one burns for. So I let those fire starters burn for over 20 minutes, and neither one performed better than the other. They both went the whole time, even though it was super windy. So this is great news. You can make really great fire starters just from the lint you have in your dryer, an egg carton, and some wax from a candle. So yeah, get out there and make some fire starters.